And this also speaks to the failure of the Democratic Party because Biden didn't have control of the border. He didn't have a plan, a real robust plan in place to build the housing units necessary, not only to accommodate an influx of migrants, but to accommodate the population of Americans that are already here.
In this video, Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks reports on immigration and the southern border. Specifically, Anna Kasparian and her co-hosts discuss virtue signaling around the topic of immigration. With that, let's watch Anna Kasparian torch the Democrat Party and their hypocrisy with regard to immigration.
You come across as a good, kind person when you're like, no, we've got room, we've got resources, it's fine. But how do you, on one hand, acknowledge that we are short 4 million housing units, and then at the same time say that it's totally fine that 8 million people cross the border?
Well, that's my point. We would have to have a policy that addressed that, right? Like, I don't think that America is a shack and 8 million people are gonna make the shack feel cramped. I think we'd have to marry that immigration policy that Biden had with housing policy. Like these things would have to be working hand in hand, and we'd have to have an orderly process in terms of processing these people. I understand what you're saying, and in terms of like, you know, all of these, like the trolling that the Texas governor did, where he sends all of these people to northern cities, and in Chicago and New York, it's like everybody's looking like, bro, we don't have space for these extra people. It's true, they don't have space for these extra people, and that's because there's no coherent policy in terms of how we're intaking these folks. My argument is that America isn't some tiny country that's overflowing in population, and somehow adding 8 million people to 360 million or whatever it is now makes it so that we're all cramped and it's busting at the seams. That's the point that I would make.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, co-host guy, but I've never heard anyone arguing when it comes to immigration or the southern border that the United States is too packed and letting in illegal immigrants will make it burst to the seams. No one's talking about that. So I don't know I don't even know who you're arguing with. Do you notice what the Young Turks did here? While Anna's making a good point that the country is short 4 million homes. I don't know if that number's right. I'll just assume that it is. And letting in millions of people will only exacerbate that problem. But the people you hear whining the most about housing shortage is the left. And I'm not saying it's a problem, but that's who I hear most complain about it. Usually they're the loudest whiners. That's the reason. But the people who also want open borders is the left. So Anna's just pointing out, how do you marry these two ideas when they completely conflict with one another? But did you notice what Anna and her co-host did? They say we shouldn't let in 8 million more illegal immigrants. They're not using the real number, which is above 20 million, probably closer to 25 million. But I don't know if they're trying to run cover by saying 8 million. I don't know if they're trying to run cover for the Democrats by saying 8 million instead of the real number. But I really don't think that's what it is. I really can't figure out a reason that benefits them to say the number is 8 million. Because her argument about the housing shortage and letting a lot of people in the country would be that much more emphatic of an argument if she gave the real number. You know what I mean? I just don't get it. Maybe it's just old habits die hard and they can't help but try to minimize the damage that the Democrats have done with immigration, because the rest of what she's saying is spot on. And then her co-host, like I said, is making a non-argument, but I guess they just can't help themselves sometimes. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
And look, I agree with you on that, but this also speaks to—
you would have to have vision.
Yeah, you'd have to have vision. You'd have to have a plan. And this also speaks to the failure of the Democratic Party because Biden didn't have control of the border. He didn't have a plan, a real robust plan in place to build the housing units necessary, not only to accommodate an influx of migrants, but to accommodate the population of Americans that are already here. So like, I'm not interested in hearing anything from any Democratic member of Congress or any Democratic candidate running for president about how pro-immigration they are if they don't have a real plan in place to build housing in this country. Okay, I don't want to hear about a subsidy. Oh, we're going to give you $25,000 toward your mortgage if you're a first-time home buyer. We need housing. We don't need the subsidy. We need you to build the effing housing. Okay? We need you to get involved in these states that have ridiculous zoning laws intended to basically prevent the construction of homes, to protect the assets of homeowners that already exist. That's the reality of the situation. They use phony environmental excuses for not wanting to build the houses. I'm sick of it. I'm not buying it. And unless Democrats do something about that, I don't want to hear about their take on anything else, because that is really the core of like a lot of the economic frustration that Americans are feeling. And what happens when Americans feel economically frustrated?
If you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
And then you have someone like Donald Trump who directs their frustration toward migrants, toward all sorts of vulnerable people, right? They're the cause of your pain and suffering. So like, I'm sorry, this environment was partially manufactured, created by the Democratic Party. And so while they're constantly crying about Trump, I'd like them to look inward a little bit and take note of their own failures that got us to the point that we're in right now. And we'll end with one more point of data from a recent NBC News poll that could be a positive sign for Trump's second term. More registered voters see the United States as heading, my God, this is amazing, in the right direction than at any point since early 2004, though a majority still say the country is on the wrong track. I don't even know what that means. Like, what does that even mean?
Well, you can forget about one thing, Anna. The Democrats will never look inward. They'll never look at their own mistakes. But more importantly, they'll never even acknowledge that they've ever made a mistake. Yeah, Anna's point about Democrat politicians and their pro-immigration arguments, she makes a point that I don't want to hear it if you don't provide a sound plan for building homes, which shows if someone's up there saying, I'm pro-immigrant, and that's what they're running on, it is complete virtue signaling. And it is completely trying to pander to the group of people who think they're good people for letting our borders just be wide open. Because if they were serious about it, part of their platform would be building more homes. But I think what they're doing on here is talking about the immigration problem and the housing problem in the same breath, when really one of them should take ultimate priority over the other. The housing issue, it's affecting people in our country right now. Why are we worried about building homes for immigrants when we can't house our own population? This just gives me more confidence in my position that we need to just shut down the border completely, because we do have a housing problem. Let's address it. Maybe the stupid Democrats could get on board with that. Why isn't that bipartisan? Let's worry about getting the people in our country housed. Then if you want to bring people into the country, bring them in legally, the right way. If you want to revamp the process, I know it's a nightmare and it's a very long process and frustrating, but that can be done too. But before you even talk about immigration and letting one person, much less millions of people into this country, why would you not address the housing problem first? And I love how the virtue signaling Democrats are using their own causes to deny building more homes. Like she said, phony environmental excuses. I guess that's a benefit of being a Democrat. You get to create fake outrage over fake causes. Then you get to use those causes when they're infringing on what you want personally. You don't want more houses built on your land. So I'll say, oh, it's the environment. The three-toed red frog, there's only 14 million of them left in the world. We got to protect them. Anyway, let's wrap it up.
I don't know. I can't make heads or tails of that. I just think that just means Republicans are more enthusiastic. They're as enthusiastic about Donald Trump as Republicans were post 9/11, Bush kicking, John Kerry's butt in the election in 2004. I think post that, Republicans are as happy as they've ever been with their candidate. That's what I think that speaks to. That's the only thing that makes any type of sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, 90% of Republican voters are happy with the Trump administration. That is the only thing that matters to Trump. He is not going to change a damn thing as long as his base is happy with what he's doing. I don't know why his base is happy with what he's doing. I mean, maybe the immigration thing is enough, but I don't know. Is your economic situation better right now? It's not better for most people.
So I think people feel like Trump is there.
I'm certainly happy with what my candidate's doing. I want to slim down the federal government. I want to cut down on spending. I want to root out the corruption that's so pervasive in our government. How can you all not understand why Trump's base would be happy with that? That poll question was worded oddly. They're happy, what they say, they're happy with the way the administration's going, but the country's on the wrong track. I just think Democrats, Republicans, whoever, have really dug the country into a hole, and we're going to be in that hole for a while as Trump starts to dig us out of it. So I interpret that statement as Trump is doing the things we want him to do to try to get things back on track, but it's going to take a while before things turn around and we feel like, okay, the actual country is headed in the right direction. I think we're happy with the actions of the Trump administration, but we got a long way to go before we say, all right, things are finally turning in the right direction. That's how I take that. But we want to hear from you. What do you all think about this conversation around housing and immigration? Are you happy with Donald Trump's job? Do you think the country's headed in the right direction or will be anytime soon? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, as always, really appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.